Welcome back to the, you know what it is, you know what time it is. This is the scoop on the VET S.O.S channel. Remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. We're here to help. And today on the scoop, sitting down on the stoop, we have two powerhouses of practical leadership. Bill Sprayberry and David McDowell. Both of them are co-authors. Be a Better Leader, a situational guide. Together, they bring over, guess what, everybody? Not 1 decade, not 2 decades, not 3 decades, 7 decades of military leadership, crisis management, and mission-first execution to the table. But this just isn't a textbook breakdown. This is about real leadership, real-time forged in the toughest conditions, delivered the raw truth. Hard-earned lessons in unapologetic honesty. This book just doesn't give you fluff. It gives you fire to walk through, mistakes to learn from, and powerful frameworks you can use to lead teams, whether you're still in the boots, at home, or in the boardroom. These two fine gentlemen, they don't just talk about leadership. They also challenge you to own it. Get ready for the no-hold-barred, high-octane conversation with these two fine gentlemen. Welcome to the scoop, Bill and Dave. What's going on? How y'all doing?
All right.
Greetings and salutations.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm
Hi,
so
man.
excited because I was like, wow. As soon as I got this book in the mail, I was like, I just started to flip through. I said, ooh, I circled this. I said, oh, I'm going to highlight this. I want to talk about this. I said, but we only have 60 minutes. So I want to try to bridge it down to some hot points because I want everybody to go and get the book because you need to add this to your library. You need to add this to your library because if I would have had it when I was going through the military and coming into the civilian sector, my scope would be larger. But enough about that. Let's get the scoop. I'm going to start with you, Dave. Is that okay if I call you Dave? Because here in the scoop, we like to sit on the stoop and just have that conversation. But let's start with you. What's the scoop on you? What's the scoop on Dave?
Well, scoop on me. Well, first of all, Kingsley, I appreciate you having us here, right? So you said I'm David McDowell, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, 1996 West Point grad. I'm originally from the DMV, so Silver Spring, Maryland. And so I just like a lot of us veterans, right? When I graduated, I was a field artillery officer. I was stationed in Germany, did Bosnia, Kosovo. Then I got to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I was able to work under the command of Bill Sprayberry, where he and I deployed to Iraq in March of 2003, where, I had command of 94 soldiers, and my responsibility was to bring them back home safe without loss of life, limb, or eyesight, right? So, that was kind of like the burden placed on me. But then, after that, back in 2004, I had an epiphany in my 20s, which something we didn't have at that age, right? Where I was like, I don't know if this is a marketable skill for me if I decide to do a career. So I actually switched into the contracting and acquisition core, did that for the last, piece of my career, went to Germany, did a bunch of other things, and did Iraq again, another Afghanistan, just in Kuwait. Then I was able to retire in 2017, and so working the corporate side. So that's where I am right now. But but that whole experience kind of drove me, and that transition was that thing that kind of got me off the sidelines to say we have to provide and equip folks to help them understand how to be a better leader, but not preach to them and not give them someone else's story, but give them actual practical use guides that they can apply in their life. So so that's it right there. I'll pass it to Bill for his intro.
Hey.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Dave. Hey, so Bill, what's the scoop on you? Because I can't wait till we get into this right here. I can't wait till we get into Be a Better Leader. But what's the scoop on you, Bill?
Well, like David, I started out early in life in the Army. I'm a retired Army colonel, field artillery. Started off at a tiny little college that nobody has ever heard of called Carson Newman College. It's in the foothills in the Appalachian Mountains outside of Knoxville. And my graduating class from ROTC had 7 guys in it. That was it. There were just 7 of us. So, I mean, I started right there. And I thought I was only going to be in the Army for about 3 years and I was going to get out and go be a school teacher and do that kind of stuff. And I loved being a soldier. I loved Germany, Italy. Um, I was a paratrooper, so 101st Airborne Division, 82nd Airborne Division. You and I have already talked about this. We were stationed up in Alaska at the same time. That was the 172nd Airborne Brigade over there at Fort Richardson. So I was over there in the airborne part of this deal. And of course, as David already mentioned, he and I went to Iraq together back in 2003. So I deployed on Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was actually on the invasion of Panama back in 1989. Of course, in OIF, and back and forth into Iraq and Afghanistan. And so there was a lot of things there. And then I got out, went into industry, kind of like Dave did. And what you discover out there is that the job doesn't last forever. It's not once you get out, it's not the Army. The job doesn't last forever. It's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Or if your contract run out, you don't have a job anymore. Well, I worked for a large defense contract company and my contract ran out. So I got let go and I retooled myself into a public school teacher. And I taught U.S. history and Arkansas history and those types of things for several years before I just kind of retired altogether. And Dave and I got together and wrote the book. So that's kind of my little tidbit, my little story.
Nice. So we talk about writing the book. We're going to label it as the book because I want to talk about this book. This is the book that Bill was talking about, Being Better Leader, a Situational Guide. So my first question to you, Bill, is what made you, I don't know did you reach out to Dave first? Did Dave reach out to you, or y'all just ran across each other at the store, or somebody picked up the phone like, hey, let's do this book? Like what made this book come to fruition?
Well, a few years ago, several of us that were in Iraq together, in fact, me, David, and the other battery commanders from that battalion, we all got together for several days over at the Omni Hotel in Oklahoma City. And our wives were there, we were there, and Dave and I started talking about this, and I brought up to him, hey, I've been thinking about writing a book, and he went, man, that's a good idea. So after we had visited there for, several days and stayed together, went out and had some meals and went down to the Artillery Museum at Fort Sill, did all that other kind of stuff. I started putting together a little bit of a outline. Dave started putting together a little bit of an outline, and we called each other about 8 weeks later, and our outlines were looking pretty close to the same thing. So we said, okay, we're going to do this. So let's just grab our bootstraps and say, we're going to put it all on paper. And we wrote for the next, 10 months, Dave? Something like that.
We decided, since we're geographically dispersed, we met every 2 weeks and held ourselves accountable and, kept the thing on teams and stuff. And, one of the other reasons for me, and we'll get into that, is, the leadership that I saw in the corporate world wasn't what I experienced in the military. And so that was also a way for me to kind of express that. And I felt that was a great time, and Bill, opened the door for that. And then we both knew each other. And then that's also mutual accountability.
Yep. And one of the reasons why the book is set up the way that it is, of course, Dave and I, being professional military officers and professional leaders, we've read a lot of books about leadership. And most of them come in two formats. One of them says, this is this list of characteristics that a great leader has to have. Well, and nobody has all of these characteristics. No one person has all of the characteristics. And the book is set up so that it says, here's the list. There's a chapter about each characteristic. There's a conclusion. Or it says, hey, all of these people are great leaders. And they'll talk about Eisenhower and Patton and Omar Bradley and George C. Marshall and these kind of guys. And the book will be set up so that it says, here's a chapter about each one of them. And then here's a compare and contrast. But no book I'd ever read said, here's the definition of leadership, and here's how you apply that in different situations. So that's the difference in our book. We give you a no kidding, hardcore definition of leadership, and we apply it to a whole bunch of situations that are out there so that you've got an idea of how to do that.
Wow. And so I'm glad you said that because I looked through. So I call it 14 and a half chapters, right? Because chapter 15 is the summary, right?
Yeah.
So you came out in chapter 1. How do we progress through the phases of leadership? So you already started out talking about the 4 phases of leadership, right? That's first thing you have to know is the what, right? Y'all were 2 commanding officers in the military now in the corporate sector. You have to know the situation, right? So what situation are you in? So Dave, like, why was that so important to go into chapter 1, like to talk about the 4 phases of leadership? Like we have
Yeah.
to y'all sat down like, look, this has to be chapter 1. Like this has to start off at first. We're gonna hit them in the mouth right now with chapter 1 with the 4 phases.
Well, I think, yeah, the main thing is really we had to set the stage and define and what leadership is, what management is, and what administration. So we had to level set the reader before we can walk them through how to apply that in a different situation. So, right, for us, leadership is, quote, the ability to foster an environment in which people motivate themselves to achieve beyond their own perceived capabilities and face problems for which there appears to be no simple solution. Leadership is people. Management is stuff, right? Directing and influencing people to go do stuff. And administrating is those functional tasks, right? HR, some of those things. So we have to feast level set and say, okay, from us, leadership is people. That's not management. That's not administration. So once the reader kind of understands that foundationally, then it's like, okay, what do I do with that information and how could I go, from where I am to where I want to go? And that starts with you and your own self leadership, right? So a lot of those things, and we talk, and it's been Bill can talk about that a little more. Is some of that self leadership is also discipline, right? Like a simple example is if I want to go work out or lose weight or do something, I got to set my clock and actually get up. I have to decide to do something else. I have to decide to do that next right thing. And then once you kind of master that, then you're able to move to the next level of tactical leadership, of leading small teams, right? So these themes are something that military folks, it's not foreign to us, but it's really the same kind of concept that you would have that in other situations. And then you grow to leading leaders, right? So first you're leading others, then you're leading leaders, and then the ultimate leadership, if you will, be strategic when you're mentoring leaders. So that's the way we kind of like laid the book out, where it's like, here's you got to understand what it is. And I think also that's helping to reprogram the reader to understand and said, leadership really isn't management. Why is that? And so once we get them there, then we kind of walk them through the different scenarios and the situations.
Yeah, Bill, what's your take on that? Like, what's one of the reasons why that chapter 1 had to start out with the 4 levels right there, just so people know the difference and know which level? And one of my next questions is, can somebody start out as a tactical before they even start on the first, or should they go in succession? Or what's your take on that? What's the scoop on
Well,
that?
I'm going to answer the last question first. The answer is no. You can't start at the tactical level. If you can't lead yourself, how can you lead somebody else? And you learn how to lead yourself starting at a very young age. You have to be responsible for you. I mean, Dave I saw the grin on your face when Dave said, if you decide you're going to lose weight. Well, several years ago, my military career cost me, physically, and I had to have a total hip replacement. And my doctor's looking at me and he goes, "Hey, Bill, I got to tell you this." He goes, "These things aren't designed to last forever. So if you lose weight, it'll last longer." I lost 60 pounds and I have not put an ounce of it back on. And before that, I had this love affair with tater tots from Sonic, okay, and peanut M&Ms. So it was up to me to say, I'm not going to eat the peanut M&Ms, and I'm not going to make the pit stop by, Sonic and eat. I mean, that's a simple example, but that's the reality of it is you have to start leading yourself. And so if you can't lead yourself, there's no way you're ever going to progress into tactical leadership or, all the way up to strategic leadership. You're just not. Um, so people that are truly leaders, somebody asked me the other day about this. There used to be this commercial on TV by a company called BASF, They said, we don't make the products you use. We make the products you use better. We don't make you a leader. You do that. We're going to make you a better leader. And that's the deal.
So Bill, this is the first time I'm sharing this on a open platform, but since you brought it up and Dave shared something earlier, it's like sometimes our journeys run parallel that we don't even know that we're not the only ones going through it. So I just want to share this right here. So
Oh, yeah. Wow.
this is me. October
Man.
of last year to now. So I'm down a little over 100 pounds, but that's when I told you when I went into that dark place and I kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And they, like you said, like I had to tell myself, nobody is gonna come and save me, right? That alarm clock go off, I gotta get up.
Right.
You know, it's past 8 o'clock. I can't put nothing in my mouth. Like I had to be disciplined, right? Because and we talked about this earlier, you have it in your book. As a leader, even though that you don't know that you're leading because people are following, people are watching, people are
Always.
seeing what you're doing, especially if you're in that positional power, right? Positional situation that by default, but what are you doing so people know that you're a leader?
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, you're leading yourself.
And I want to start this off with Dave. Like, how do you teach your team to own mistakes without letting it define them? Right. I had to, and man, this is real hard for me because I had to face myself in the mirror. I said, man, you was a senior non-commissioned officer. You're sitting at a director position and you're trying to stand up and tell people what to do, but you're not following what you're telling people what to do. So as the two individuals, y'all say y'all had multiple people underneath your command. How was it when you had to stand in front of and security forces? We had Garma. I think y'all have it's called what is it called in the Army? Stand up or formation.
Formation.
Yeah.
Right.
When you have formation, right? So you have a mission at hand, and now it's time for you to lead all different type of mindsets, all different type of individuals, all different type of backgrounds to that one focused mission. So what are some of the things that you could share with us on how to start building out? Because now we still talk about that chapter 1, right? How do we progress through the phases of leadership?
Yeah. Well, I'll start and I'll let Bill. I'll let Bill give you the better answer, right? Because I'll do it. But I think because there are you had a lot of thoughts in there. But I think one is, you know, the idea of a North Star. I think for the military, for us, that's when you talk about the different, backgrounds and everything else, it's generally easier to get people aligned for, hey, we all provide for the common defense, and we're here from in that capacity, and so that helps you get people aligned to the same mission. But it still starts at the leader, and when you are communicating your vision, your expectations of them, how you're going to communicate with them. You're building a level of trust. And it's still, as you said, leadership is people. You're still connecting with people and you have to find out where they are, who they are. You have to invest in that. And so I think once you do that up front, when you start getting those harder decisions down the road, or you have to you have to command a soldier to do something, to go in harm's way, they've got that trust in you that they know that you're a good leader because you've demonstrated that in the past, right? And so we talk in some of our videos we do on LinkedIn is, how to lose trust as a leader, right? It's like we always hear that is you can lose trust just like that, but it takes forever to rebuild it. So that's almost that, zero defect mentality that a leader has to portray. Now, on the other side is we're also human and we also make mistakes. And we said from the beginning in this book, it said, we're not perfect, and we're not saying that we are, but we're providing a practical guide for leadership. But that also is about that humility and being, what the term someone told me recently was like consciously vulnerable, right? You have to be able to show them that, when you make a mistake, you got to own up to it, right? You have point fingers, because back to the beginning, if you're the leader, you're responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen, right? So it kind of goes back to there.
Yeah, and to go along with that, you've got to be seen carrying out the orders that you give everybody else. That this is a simple thing, but if I'm not wearing my Kevlar helmet while I'm in my combat vehicle and my soldiers see me without my Kevlar helmet on, then it's okay for them to not wear it, and now we have a safety situation. All right? If I'm not if I'm not on time, if I'm not present and on time for guard mount or formation, then and my soldiers see that, or my subordinates see that, then they think it's okay for them to be late. Hey, the old man's late, so I can be late too. Uh-uh. It goes down to that simple of things. When Dave and I were together at the battalion that I commanded, I had these 3 simple rules to live by. I nicknamed them the 3 bullets. And I
Three
used to
votes.
carry 3.5.56 rounds in my pocket so that every time I talked about them, I'd pull them out and set them up. And all of my subordinate commanders carried 3.5.56 rounds in their pocket too, because they lived by it. Rule number 1 was know and do your job. If you don't know your job, then you can't do your job. And if you can't do your job, somebody else has to. So why do I need you? So know and do your job. Be a warrior. We were a combat unit. I mean, you were on security. So, I mean, that was serious business. So you had to be a warrior. You had to know when to stand up, when to sit down, when to lay down, when to fire, when not to fire. You had to figure all that stuff out. And finally, remember you're an American soldier and act like it at all times, because it takes character to be an American soldier. So those were the 3, and I didn't allow anybody to put those on some cheesy PowerPoint chart or some, big sign in the unit. I made everybody memorize them. And if I walked up to a private and said, "Tell me what bullet number 2 is," and the private couldn't tell me, his sergeant had to come and tell me, and then the sergeant was doing push-ups. But when I asked the soldier, "What is bullet number 2?" and he told me, and I said, "What does that mean to you?" Now I'm directly leading and cutting everybody else out of the middle. And over time, everybody started learning them. So even if I wasn't present, David could talk to him about it. The sergeant could talk to him about it. It was just part of what got inculcated into the unit. It was that simple.
And one of the quotes, like I said, when I was reading through it, one of the things that stuck out to me where it says, "Leadership is not black and white; it operates in the gray area."
Right.
Y- and just like what you just mentioned, and because my brain is so my brain got rewired, right? I shared that with you. So when I seen that in the book, I was like, wow, it is in the gray area, because you need to know the situation at hand, right? There's not always a right answer, right? It's every situation is different. Now, as a leader, how do you, and this was my challenging time when I had to transition from military mindset to the corporate sector, is different. It's different because I was trained as structure, like if somebody is a higher rank, then that we go that route. In the corporate sector, it's not the oldest it's you see what I'm saying? So it was challenging for me. So I know it is for others. And when they're in that structured environment, when they have to do that transition to the next portion of their life, is how do they combat that, or how do they prepare for that? Because just like I said, like, it's not black and white. It's a gray area. That leadership is fluid.
Yeah. Dave, you want to take that one on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the preparation piece, right, is even at 21 years, and you got a year or 2 before, and you're already thinking about retirement, where I'm gonna go, and probably for most of us, it was, I wonder what GS job I can get. Right? It was just because all we knew was DoD and didn't think about kind of the rest of the world. So it's like part of that is you got to take advantage of those transitions. It sounds cheesy, but take advantage of those transition resources, and you got to start learning about areas that you may not know about. Right? You got to educate yourself and do some homework. And it goes kind of that self-leadership, self-discipline thing. But I think also as you lose that structure and that, the cocoon that we had and all the support of the military, you got to find a new network, or you should continue. You start working on growing your network while you're transitioning. LinkedIn, your professional contacts, your personal contacts, and continue to have that. That'll be the village that you'll rely on kind of when you're out, right? And so that was one of the things I really relied on. Is when I came into the company I worked for, I embraced the veterans resource group, the employee resource group. So we got like-minded veterans that also helped me through and talk about the trend. Like, I didn't understand the promotion process till like year 4, right? I mean, I'm sitting there like mad and going, how come I'm not getting promoted? And it's like, well, it's not like every 2-3 years somebody looks at you and they get in front of a board and there's a list comes out and I'm just waiting for my number to get called. It's like, you got to go out and get it, right? You have to tell people what you want. You have to tell people why they want it. That also goes back to the preparation of, you got to do the homework, but also understand your value. And I think that's one of the main things that veterans, we underappreciate. We undervalue ourselves because we're that invisible hand and all shucks, we're just going to get it done. And it's like, you have to learn a little bit of self-promotion and against with that networking. And I'll close out before I go to Bill is, but the thing with networking isn't asking for a job. It's about building relationships that open doors, right? So you don't think about it as butt kissing and all that other stuff. It's about building relationships that open doors for capabilities and skills that you already have that organization would benefit from, right? You've got those veteran superpowers that they need, right? So turn that mentality into asking for something and versus, you're an in-demand commodity that you're able to market yourself and get those skills. So I know there's a lot there, right? But I think that was kind of the journey that I've experienced through my transition.
One of the things that I saw coming out of the military was that leadership is supposed to be the same. Leadership equals people. It's supposed to be the same whether you're in the military, whether you're in the boardroom, whether you're in the classroom. It doesn't matter. Even if you're out on the job site, building a house. Leadership is about people. But it didn't turn out that way. And David talked about promotions. A lot of people get promoted because they're a great manager. They're a manager of stuff. They're a manager of where boxes are, of budgets, or are the bus schedule on time? Do we have all the money we're supposed to have? That's not about people. That's about stuff. Or you find some administrator who's written the company policy on paid time off, and they get a bonus and they get promoted because they know how to write a policy about paid time off. But that's also not about people. You need great administrators, you need great managers, but if the leadership isn't there, none of that stuff really matters. You can have a running bus schedule and you can have a great, employee handbook and still not have a great organization because there's nobody on top of that thing leading it and caring about the people that are in it.
Wow, and that's just so in chapter 3, I labeled it truth, timing, and trust, right? So leaders like to balance that transparency. Whew. So this is like when I shared with y'all, before, as being a CNI non-commissioned officer, my first opportunity into the corporate sector was an unpaid intern. It was a real piece of humble pie, but I had to share, and I ran across a couple of my buddies like, man, why you doing as an unpaid intern, man? You don't know what the skill set. I just want somebody to take a chance on me because I kept sending out resumes, I going to interviews, and they basically what I heard in my head was, oh, cool story, bro. Like cool story. That's what you did there. This is a different this is a different entity. So I came in as an intern, but I showed them my value. And what I tell others to do is like, it's okay. Sometimes you might have to come in at a step or two below in order for people to take a chance on you, right? Because just like you said, Bill, that and Dave, that we have this in the military structure, right? You go up for a board every couple of years, right? It's either your records look good and then you move on to the next, or you can answer a list of questions and then you're either promotable or not promotable. And the corporate sector is, here is our annual revenue share, what we try to get to, or we have investors that we have to make sure that we meet this goal. What are you going to do to help meet that goal? How are you going to bring value? How are you going to add value? Yes, it looks good on paper, but what are you going to do? Are you going to be physically here? Are you going to be contributing? So what's what's some of the ways that as a new veteran that's transitioned, or somebody that's like been in the corporate sector for a while and just kind of find that stagnant, like I don't know, I'm not getting promoted. Well, what are you doing to get promoted?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, we talk about our OER or NCOER and all those things, and we have like the rater comments and senior rater comments and some of those things. The way I've seen it, structured is, you're rated on 3 or 4 different areas. And one is business results, which is kind of what you're talking about. Hey, here are the company goals and how much profit and everything that we're going to get. I would say off the bat is that you should be focusing on how directly how much your role directly impacts those business results, right? I think that is probably like the main driver. If you can insert your align with that way. Also, it's kind of like we do with a higher headquarters mission, right? Is make sure if they got 3 or 4 things on the mission, those things need to be nested in my mission. I heard someone say one time, what's interesting to my boss should be fascinating to me, right? Kind of that concept. But then the other one is client stakeholder, right? How well like interpersonal communications and relationships kind of thing. And then the third one I've seen is teamwork and leadership. A lot of times we'll like, oh yeah, we got that in spades. But most cases they're focusing on business results. And so I think, even though we're about the total person, the real advice is understand what that business or what that company is doing and understand how you can make an impact in terms of what, those main drivers are. Because at the end of the day, they're going to make decisions about cuts when things happen if you're not, part of the secret sauce or part of the folks that are really making an impact, then you make yourself at risk. So yeah, and Bill, I don't know what your thoughts kind of on that are.
Well, in the military world, then Dave mentioned it. You've got the officer evaluation report, the non-commissioned officer evaluation report, and you're going to get one of those. And they're going to be pretty honest. They are, because the leader it's their responsibility to be honest with you. What I noticed in the corporate world for 10 years is that they may or may not be honest. They were fluffy, and they may be telling you the truth or not. I mean, and they don't care. A lot of people don't care because they haven't been in the place where it makes a difference and people live or die based upon, how good of a leader you happen to be. As I got ready to transition out of the corporate world, I actually applied for a job there. Dave and I were talking about this earlier. I actually applied for a job internal to the company, got a telephone interview, and I thought, okay, great. I made the interview list. And then I got a second telephone interview where there were 3 people on the telephone besides me. So I'm thinking, hey, things are going pretty good. And then they invited me to a face-to-face interview where they had to fly me from Oklahoma to Baltimore. They paid for my plane ticket, paid for my hotel room, paid for my per diem, paid for a rental car. I went to the interview. I actually was acquainted with 2 of the 4 people in the room that were interviewing me. After the
Mhm.
interview was over, never heard another word. Never.
Crickets.
I sent the obligatory email that said, hey, I appreciate you guys taking the time out. Never heard a word. My boss even contacted them. They never responded to him. So they didn't care. They did not care. But in the military, somebody's going to tell you. Somebody's going to tell you that, hey, you're doing good or you're not doing good. And if you're not doing good, here's what you can do better. And even if you are doing good, here's what you're doing well. And here's something you can work on to make yourself better overall. Somebody's going to tell you that. But in the corporate world, they just don't care, because I don't think anybody's holding them accountable. I did it, but I did it out of natural cause because that's the way I'd been doing business for years and years. So,
Yeah, to add on that real quick, that's a good point. I was sitting there thinking about the evaluations I've gotten the last 8 years or so, right? And you think about all the time and effort you write into your NCO and into your evaluation when you're in the military and all like the seriousness that we give it. And I'm spending a whole month working on my stuff. I got a whole spreadsheet, all my accomplishments and all those different areas. And I'm killing it. I'm doing that impacts and all that kind of stuff. And the manager writes like 2 sentences, right? They write, Dave did an okay job. He's doing kind of thing. It's like, how am I supposed to build off that, right? And so I think on the flip side was what the other lessons is that you got to back to self leadership is like you got to be a little more hungry, right? And the other thing is you got to ask for feedback, right? People say, hey, that's a nasty, dirty word, but it's like, you got to pull it out of those people to get that information. And if your manager's not being candid with you, go find a mentor, go find a coach, go find somebody else that'll give you that candor and that honesty, right? So that's what I was talking about, that village. It's like also the people that you also rely on and trust. It's like it's not going to be as easy, right? It's going to be a little more work to do it, but you got to build it so people tell you what you're doing wrong, or not, what you can do better, or the things that you can improve on. Because for those military folks, this is all a whole new world for us, right? We can all go crazy in DOD, and we understand that but we, both of us only spend together less than 20 years in the corporate world, right? So we're still learning and growing. And so you need to do that as a village. And I think we should, as veterans, continue to rely on that, post-military service.
Yeah, that is awesome, because I see in chapter 7, you put leading others, and we touched on it a little bit at the and thing. And I remember before we hit the record, but you said, "Well, how can you lead others if you can't even lead yourself?
Yep.
Yeah.
How can you lead others if you can't even lead yourself?" So where do somebody start off? Because that's I've seen that's the hanging point where it's like, well, I don't know which way to go, or what should I do? Because if you have that military mindset, it's like, well, I'm gonna stay back till somebody tell me where to go, what to do. I have to be told what time to wake up, what time to be at formation, what time to be at work. What On the corporate side, like, here's a task, here's when it's due. I need to see something on my desk by 08. Go.
Yeah, but Kingsley, here's the deal. You did
Yeah.
that. You did what you talked about for about the first 3 or 4 years. Somebody's going to tell me where to be, what time to be there, what I'm going to do when I get there. After a couple of 3 or 4 years, you have gained that whole military mindset now, and nobody's got to tell you anymore. I've been retired from the Army for 16 years, and I still wake up at 5 o'clock every morning. And this morning, I can't run anymore, because of some physical issues. But I rode my bike 20 miles this morning.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, Dave's a bike rider. He's more in better shape than I am, because he's like 10, 12 years younger than I am. But the reality of it is, I still wake up in the morning. I still look at myself in the mirror and feel like I'm a soldier, even though I've been retired for 16 years, because it's who I am. It's what I became. And after the first few years I was in the Army, nobody had to tell me what time to, that I had to be on time, that I had to be present, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Nobody told me those things anymore, because I knew them inherently. It was part of the culture. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And Kingston, to kind of also to add on to part of the questions you're kind of talking about is, it's you kind of already got that. If you're talking about leading others, we've not implying, but we're saying you've kind of gotten you're probably you're probably trained at leading yourself, right? So then it's, what are those areas that you may have some issues with because you may not have led others before, right? But it goes back to some of those our kindergarten kind of things. Be present, communicate often and clearly, know what's important. You know, you don't know it all. Learn how to delegate. So it's starting to go, and it's like, okay, all right, boom, I'm put in this leadership position. What are the things that I'm good at? What are the things I may need help at? How do I communicate that to my subordinate folks? So you're still building that level of trust, but you're also being consciously vulnerable again, where you're like, I don't know it all. I'm good at these couple of things, and that's why you're good at the. I remember when I think before we were in Iraq, we were training in, I think, in White Sands. And Bill was talking to the subordinate commanders. And one of the things he said to us was like, I've already done your job. I don't need to do your job again. Right. And he was just like, hey, I'm here to do certain things, but I'm not going to go down and do it, right? So one, I knew, and I got the trust that he's not going to micromanage me. But I also had now the responsibility that, like, oh, it's on me now, right? So those are other ways that you kind of communicate that. And that resonated with me, that I still remember that theme and lesson, where it's like, I need to, set up from the beginning, trust in my subordinates and be like, I trust that you know how to do your job, and I'm not here to do it for you. And I think that goes a long way, especially for folks who don't really know where to start. It's like, start building that bridge of trust with people, and then everything will kind of go from there.
Yeah, and the people that are getting out of the military, they're getting out with a skill set. They are.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think about that. There's mechanics and cooks and logistics specialists and law enforcement like yourself, uh, communicators, heavy equipment operators, truck drivers, all manner of stuff. They're walking out the door with a skill set. My brother-in-law was a Marine, but his job was helicopter mechanic. He came out and got his master mechanic's license and worked on 18-wheelers for the next, 15 years. So you're coming out with a skill. So take advantage of the skill that you have while you're figuring out how the promotion system works, wherever you are, and how you move up in the leadership realm from being the apprentice to being the master mechanic, or the master carpenter, or the master electrician, or whatever it happens to be, because all those are military skills. That they are. Not everybody is the killer. There got to be guys out there supporting the killers. I mean, there have to be,
Yeah.
or else the killers are all going to get killed. I mean, it's kind of the way it works. So,
Right. And one of the things I see where it says, in the book, it says, give credit, take the blame as a leader. I know that's hard for some people to swallow, but give credit where credit is due, and take the blame. Hey, it's both y'all was in commander positions. I'm sure that some of your subordinate units didn't do stuff by the books. I know when I was I had a team. I had to take the blame. Like, yes, it's on me. They're underneath my tutelage. So yeah, I'm gonna take the blame, but then give the credit out and things. So that was one of my key leadership points and you have it in the book. So can you go a little bit more deeper? Because I know y'all can explain it better than, because I see it in here, but y'all actually lived it, because y'all over huge amounts, take the blame, give the credit. Why was that so important to make sure that was in the book?
well, I'm going to start and I'll turn it over to Dave, because this is something I actually told David the day he took command.
Mhm.
There's a change of command ceremony in military units, and you pass the guidon around, and the more senior commander takes it from the old commander, and then he hands it to the guy that's going to be the new commander. And I told this to everybody when they took command of one of my subordinate units, and I told it to David. The moment you're holding the guidon in your hand, you're responsible. It doesn't matter whether you were there or not. Doesn't matter whether you knew it was happening or not. It doesn't even matter if you were awake or asleep or not. Doesn't matter. You are responsible. So that means that it doesn't matter what anybody below you does. Everything that they do is your fault. So if you're going to be so pig-headed as to say, because I wasn't there and something good happened, it's my fault too, you can't do that. You got to be the guy that is upfront about it, so that if you're not present, or if you're asleep and you don't know what's happening, you got to give credit to the lower level, the platoon sergeant, the platoon leader, the first sergeant. I didn't know everything. I'm going to tell this story, and I'm going to turn it over to David. Dave knows the story I'm getting ready to tell. We got
Yeah.
ordered to move up to attack a target when we were in Iraq. And so I'm going to move the whole battalion, everybody. And Dave is the lead unit, and he's like 2 vehicles back in the convoy. I mean, he's right up front. And it's getting dark, and we drive through this little built up area, like a little urban town area. And I'm looking around, and there are guys wearing these thobes and waving Kalashnikovs and AK-47s around. And I pick up the hand mic and I call Dave on the radio. His call sign was Rock. And I said, "Hey,
That's it.
Rock, this is attack." I said, "You need to go to weapons red now." And this is the only call I got back. He said, "I'm way ahead of you." I kind of thought, okay, he's trained, he's doing his thing. I don't need to say anything else. I put the hand mic down, and we kept on, boogieing straight up the pipe to the position that we were supposed to be in to fire. Nothing else was required. I just thought, okay, great, we're good. Here we go. So we're moving along. Dave?
Yeah, no, I love to hear that story every time you say it, right? But I think, Kings, to your point about, back to chapter 3 is responsibility versus authority, right? And then we've already established that, as a leader, everything that happens or fails to happen is your fault. What we're also saying is that as a leader, you have the ultimate responsibility. You have the ultimate authority. Now, it's up to you to delegate that authority and responsibility down to subordinates to execute it. But at the end of the day, it's still on you. So another quick example. Once again, I think we were training for a mission in Iraq, and we had to do this SEED mission, so suppression of enemy air defenses. So we're the artillery unit, and we're waiting for our air assets, and we're supposed to put down some covering fire. They fly through, they do what they do. We put some covering fire so they can come out, right? So everything is timed perfectly through these air corridors, so we don't hurt our own Air Force assets, but also we engage the target. So we're doing this training, and we're doing it. We're getting it. We never get it right. We just can't get the timing right. We're just too late. We can't get it, or whatever the excuses were. So Sprayberry, Bill, I was about to call Colonel Sprayberry, but so he brings all the commanders in around the Humvee, and we look, and there's 5 body bags, and he goes, those are the bodies of pilots from those planes. They don't care that you were late, that you had a bad day, that you had a headache, that whatever went on in your life, what was going on, all they needed to know is that you were supposed to serve that target and you didn't, right? And as a leader, you're ultimately responsible for that, right? So even some of those, lighter reasons, I was like, okay, that's a life and death reason why we need to be better to make sure that we're doing this for other people and stuff, right? Now, I don't know, and then we could talk later about kind of like the civilian applications to that. But, I think it still resonates with that. It's still about responsibility and authority. And so it's as much as we talk about how it's good to be, and it's great to be a leader and to be a better leader, you also have to accept that responsibility that you're also going to assume, right? So that's also something you need to take into account as well.
And one of the things that I took away from like the summary of the book, and you had it multiple times throughout, communicate, communicate, communicate.
Yep.
And it was listed throughout the book. So I'm like, that is right. And y'all just shared a event that happened, right? Communication is key. How can a subordinate, a leader knows what one wants or what one wants to receive or give without that word, communicate?
Right.
And y'all make sure that it was so of importance. I looked at in every chapter, and y'all could look, that's why y'all need to get the book, because in every chapter, that word communicate is in there. All 15 chapters. The word communicate flows in every single chapter. So that word kept sticking out to me like communicate. That makes sense. As a leader, you have to communicate. As a follower, you have to communicate. As a human being, you have to communicate. So, Bill, before we start to wrap up, like, what's your thing? Because I see that y'all had one child collab and put this book together. Like, I don't know if that was coincidence or what. I don't know if you have like, hey, we have to make sure this word communicate is in every chapter, because we want to make sure that hit home, because communication is key. It's the linkage to good leadership, bad leadership.
Well, David mentioned it a while ago. Just in our collaboration, we would have meetings on Zoom or Skype or whatever you want to call the system that you're using. Sometimes every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week. We were getting together, and we had shared documents on websites, so that he and I could both write at the same time, and we could see what each other was writing. We were communicating regularly, and just because we published the book, Dave and I still have meetings regularly about selling the book and advertising. And believe it or not, we're already writing a second book together. little different. What we've taken is one idea out of this book, and it wasn't communicate. But can you imagine today any political candidate? It doesn't matter what political party you belong to. I don't care. Can you imagine a political candidate running for office and not advertising on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and sending out automatic text messages and having robocalls, or trying to get themselves on the Sunday morning talk shows? I mean, it doesn't matter what your political ilk is. You're not getting elected unless you're trying to tell everybody what you're about. It's just not happening. So if you can't communicate your idea, if you can't communicate your vision, it's kind of like the 3 bullets I mentioned a while ago. Know and do your job, be a better warrior, and remember you're an American soldier and act like it at all times. I love the last one, because if somebody sees you acting like a fool while you're in uniform, then they think, because I'm a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, guardian, whatever they call those guys nowadays, and they see you acting like a fool, then they think I'm a fool too. So that's kind of the whole idea of communicating the vision out there, is to say it over and over and over and over till it just becomes ingrained. That's kind of my thinking on the communicate part. You just got to do it over and over. Dave?
Yeah, no, and then to that, I won't belabor that part, but I think another angle to communication is, how does, what are some of the things we talk about as like communication traps, or some of those things that, a leader has to be, concerned about. And some of that is, one of the concepts is, difference between, I think, the military and the corporate world in some sense is, back to the business results thing. That's one of the other reasons why I felt compelled to write the book, is that, the leadership that I was experiencing is that, a manager was incentivized for his own contribution to those business results, not how well that manager helped 4 or 5 of his people get better, faster, stronger, right? So I was like, from the get-go, the value proposition of where we have, it is different. But the other thing is, and so, and I always took the thing of, from the military, who else needs to know, right? Like, I know some information that may impact somebody, that may help them. And so that's one of the things, is like, being a communicator is, you're showing and demonstrating trust when you're sharing what, you can't share everything, right? But you can share, information, and people keep up to date. You're not hoarding information, you're not gossiping, but you're using that way of communicating to other people to demonstrate, one, so they understand what you need to get done, but then also, getting that across. You're not gossiping, you're not avoiding tough conversations. That's back to that discipline where, you get that feedback to somebody and say, hey, it's just a light example, right? Say, hey, your breath stinks, you may want to take a breath mint, right? That takes that candor, that option to go do that with somebody, right? But you're doing it from a source of helping them and making them better, right? And not an adversarial thing, right? So, and then the other thing I'll just say in terms of a small thing is that when we were researching communication in the chapter, I learned it was like nonverbal communication is like 70 something percent of it, right? So we also have to be cognizant, as we talk about how we present ourselves, is that, am I slouching? Am I on the phone? Am I doing this? I'm not paying attention to somebody. Like, be present, be in the moment, right? And those are the other ways that you also can communicate without really communicating.
Man, so look, y'all heard it first. But if y'all want to know more, and y'all want to get more, y'all need to get this book right here. Be a Better Leader. It's not just a book, it's a guide, right? It's a guide. It's something where you can have in your too big, and you can get it. How can they get a copy? Can they get it digital? Can they go on Amazon? Can they reach out to you? How can they get a hold of this right here?
Okay, well, Dave and I actually have our own webpage. It's called beabetterleaderbook.com. And when you get there, it has links to Amazon where you can buy it in hardback, paperback, or an ebook and put it on your Kindle. It has links to Ingram Spark where you can do the same thing. It has links to Books A Million where you can do the same thing. It has links to several other, like Kobo and those kind of folks, where you can go and buy the book, or you can just go onto Amazon and type in either David McDowell or Bill Sprayberry. It doesn't matter. And this book is going to pop up and you can buy it. And if you live in Columbus, Ohio, call Dave on the phone. If you live on the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line around Fayetteville and Fort Smith, call me on the phone and you can buy it directly from us. And if you buy it directly from one of us, it's actually cheaper than it is to buy it online. So, because we've already paid the taxes and the shipping and the printing and all that other kind of stuff. So it's cheaper to buy it from us than it is, but you can go online to all those places.
Absolutely. And then we're also on LinkedIn. You can follow us there. We have newsletters, a weekly newsletter with leadership themes and our 3-minute reads. And so it's just good information for people. We got videos, we got all that stuff. So we're just about expanding the leadership universe so people have something to tap into so they can become a better leader.
And my Facebook page is completely public. It is. So you go in and type in Bill Sprayberry on Facebook. You might find my dad on there. I would tell you you'll see the difference between me and him. One, he was in the Air Force and I was in the Army, but yeah, and he's a little older than I am, as you might imagine. But yeah, it's completely that way. If you don't mind for a minute, Kingsley, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, because this is Veterans SOS, and there may be people that are not veterans that are watching this. One of the things we talk about in this book, and I want to be sure to mention, is veterans superpowers. They are veteran superpowers. And so if you are looking for a new hire, you have to hire a veteran, because they have these superpowers. They are present. They are on time. They are respectful. They are professional. They solve problems. They're going to be loyal to your organization. They have integrity. They place service before themselves, and they accept responsibility. So if you're out there and you're looking for a new hire and you see somebody that says that they're a veteran, look at them first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And y'all heard it here first. Y'all won't hear it nowhere else. So y'all gotta come here and get this. Because remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. You're gonna grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. And for our non-veterans, VET S.O.S means vets share our story. So this is part of our story. My story, your story, Dave's story, Bill's story. It doesn't matter. It's a story, it's a journey. Whether we have walking through life, you can have as well. At the end of the day, one thing we can't get back is time. So I appreciate y'all for sharing time with us. I appreciate everybody for coming in and listening. And I appreciate everybody for wanting to be a better leader. Thank you. Until next time.
Thanks for having
Peace.
us.
Thank you.